Good morning, everyone. Afternoon, evening, whatever it is. We're going to discuss something I've been wanting to discuss for a while. And that is my motorcycle finally perfect? The way I want it set up. It's been a very long journey. I've had this thing 10 years. I've done modifications throughout the years. And I just want to discuss what I think of it now. So as with anything in life, right, I think it's everybody's goal to constantly improve. Personally, professionally, materially. Why not, right? Improvement's good. As long as it's not obsessive and bankrupting yourself, whatever, right? But, improvement's good. We can all agree on that, I think. Probably shouldn't have put the choke in just yet, but that's okay. We will make it. So, is it perfect? Well, let's rewind to 2011. 2011, I bought this thing. It was $5,300 for those curious, with 8,300 miles on it. Something like that. So, that was a good, average price back then. And it's funny as it's maybe not because of the miles I have on it, but they're not really going for anything different now. They just kind of cost the same amount of money, which is kind of interesting, but obviously inflation, so it's worth less. But anyway, I'm meandering. $5,300. Bone stock, other than Screaming Eagle slip-ons. It was a full stage one. It was the intake that's on it to this day. Screaming Eagle slip-ons. Carb tune, somebody drilled out the adjuster screw and stuff and put some jets in it or whatever. So it ran great. Ran perfectly fine. Did what I needed it to do. And then I did some research and learned more about motorcycles, and I was under the impression that I needed Progressive fork springs, which have a increasing spring rate when you as the forks compress. That was what was hot back then. It was the belief that would make your bike handle better. Also, I bumped up to 10 or maybe even 15 weight fork oil from the factory 5 weight fork oil. That was also very popular back then. So we did those couple little mods. Then in the rear, I did taller rear shocks. So stock, these are like 13 and a quarter, these are 13 and a half, so they're not really much taller, but the stock shocks also sag like crazy. So just by putting aftermarket shocks on in general, you get a little bit of a bump there. So that was a good performance increase, a little better compression, rebound, dampening, and all that stuff. But very basic suspension. Then from there, I went to a fork brace with that setup, and I rode the bike for quite a while like that. Many years, and I always had a good time. You have videos you can see on this channel of me ripping around twisties and having a good time on it. It handled fine, right? Very acceptably. So it's the Progressive 412s in the rear. I should mention that the HD ones. So anywho, rode that for a while. And then when I redid the front end 2 winters ago now, so like a year and a half ago, I decided to get cartridge front fork inserts. And because I actually cracked my triple trees from doing God knows what, probably wheelies back in the day, because of that, I had to replace triple trees. So I have Billet Pro 1 Performance aluminum triple trees. So those are a little expensive, but they look cool as hell, and they're stiffer and should actually stiffen the front end up, at least so I'm told. So that was a good little upgrade. And then I retained the fork brace, and I did the Progressive brand cartridge front fork inserts. Now, they've been good to me so far, and I have the same rear suspension, and the bike handles noticeably better with the cartridge front fork inserts. Definitely one of the better, if not best, modification I've ever done. And they were only like, high twos, $300, something like that. They're relatively inexpensive compared to other offerings. However, they do not have adjustable on-the-fly preload, compression, or rebound dampening. They only have preload adjustment, and that's via shims inside the forks. So that's a little bit of a bummer. I mean, I knew that when I bought them. I didn't think I'd care about it. In retrospect, I kind of wish I bought something fancier, but these do perform really well, so I can't complain. And the cool thing is, they are designed for this specific bike, for the 1200 Roadster. model Sportster. They're not like a universal fit for all 39 millimeter forks. So there was some conscious effort put into the valving for this bike. So I think that's why they handle pretty well, because somebody who's probably a lot smarter than me at Progressive Suspension did in fact put some thought into this. So that's a good thing. But yeah, with that setup, I really opened up the handling of this bike, but I was still left with a little bit of I don't know, it was not quite the handling I wanted. I rode the Lowrider S at Americade this year, and I said to myself, I'm like, man, this bike handles well, but I think it can do better. So I did some research and everything, and I know I can upgrade the suspension further by quite a bit. I have pretty like base level suspension on this thing. It's really nothing that fancy. I could go full Öhlins, or I could go Legends, or just something really high end, and that would make a big difference, I'm sure, too. But honestly, I did motor mounts, which definitely helped stiffen things up. That was a pain in the ass project, as you saw on the channel, but well worth it. And then the other thing I did, which nobody really talks about when it comes to handling motorcycles, but I just put new tires on it. And, you know, I had 2 worn out tires. The rear tire was a little bit cupped and real flattened out in the profile, and the front tire was pretty much equally as worn. And let me tell you what, man, a set of fresh tires, if you're on a bike that isn't quite handling the way you expect it to, you know, do yourself a favor, and if the tires are worn out, put some tires on it before you spend a bunch of money on suspension. Because I'll tell you, this thing handles as well as I can imagine it handling, or I should say, as well as I quote-unquote need it to handle for any type of riding I'm doing. Now, will I still upgrade the suspension at some point? Yeah, probably, just because it's kind of a hobby of mine and I like doing that kind of stuff. But do I need to? Absolutely not. At least not at this power level. You know, if you have a really high horsepower bike, you know, it might help control some of the surging and stuff when you're, you know, really raw on the throttle, and if it's constantly pulling the front wheel up, you know, just help keep things settled when the wheel comes back down and whatnot. But this suspension, I really feel like it does a pretty good job. I mean, I've ridden motorcycles with Öhlins and, you know, different high-end suspension setups, and ridden with people with those, and yeah, I mean, obviously they're performing better, but I don't know. This setup is no slouch. It does a good job. So I'm really not, I'm not in a hurry to replace it anytime soon. And I've just been enjoying the bike. I don't ever feel unstable anymore around higher speed corners or low speed corners. Everything kind of works out well. I like a touch more spring rate in the front end. I like Progressive suspension products. I know that they're not super popular anymore. They used to be like all the rage 10 years ago, from what I did research online and stuff. But I still think they have good products. If you get the 940s, the remote reservoir 940s, they gotta be, I feel like they're pretty good. These forks for the price are great, these cartridges. You know, again, I would probably do a little better, but I'm rambling. The setup works at the end of the day. You can slice it however you want. It works well. It's a loud Subaru. Su-8-oo-woo. But, so I'm very, very, very satisfied. I mean, this thing, just the aesthetic appeal too. I did the little, literally like $30 on Amazon for the quarter fairing up front over the headlight. I don't know, that just made a big difference visually for me. I bought a new seat, which is so much more comfortable. I don't know why I didn't do that years ago. This Mustang, I have the Mustang, I don't know, Fastback maybe. It's a really nice seat. It wasn't even that expensive. It was like $300, which in motorcycle seat terms is like actually not that much money. And I don't know, I think it's really comfortable. I can ride 200-300 miles and my butt feels basically fine. Whereas my stock seat, I was hurting after 100. I also brought the bars up 3 inches, which made a big difference comfort-wise, and I think helped the looks a little bit. I'd like to get the bars a little higher. I might spend the money and do that maybe this year, maybe next year. Not pressing. I like where they are now, so I'm not in a hurry to do it. But, God, yeah, I got the looks down. I got the freaking blower trees powder coated when I had the front end apart. You know, and then the black triple trees versus the aluminum, raw aluminum, you know, just looks nicer in my opinion. It just modernized the look of the bike without completely changing what it was. You know, this bike has a lot of heritage to me because I've owned it so long. It's just nice to see elements of what used to be and some elements of something new, to have something different to look at. That's what's cool about a Harley, right? I mean, other bikes too, but I don't know, the aftermarket for Harley is like endless. And I'm not like a big style guy. I don't care to like modify my bike to the hilt visually. But it's just nice to have something that's cool to look at. Like, why not, right? I mean, why not have something perform great and look cool at the same time? Those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. The quarter fairing also makes it a lot more comfortable to ride too. It blocks more, it pushes more wind up and away from your chest than I ever would have dreamed. I'm not really sure how that works, to be honest with you. It seems like it's impossible, but it does. And the way that I know that it works is because I rode the Lowrider S, which has the same fairing basically, at Americade and whatever. I didn't think anything of it. Well, I hopped on the Street Bob right after, which granted your arms are a touch more in the air on the Street Bob, but I hopped on that after, which has no fairing, and I was on the highway and I'm like, I'm getting blown off this freaking bike. What's going on? And then it dawned on me, it's that stupid little fairing. It absolutely makes a big difference. I heard a horn there for some reason. But it absolutely makes a big difference. So I really appreciate having it, and I don't know that I ride without one at this point. You know, and as I get older, I'm really starting to appreciate bikes like the Lowrider ST, just with a good, bigger fairing. I wouldn't even mind putting a little bit bigger, you know, windscreen fairing type setup on this. You know, the Memphis shades and stuff, like they have a lot of nicer looking ones nowadays. You know, there's a reason, like, okay, like this whole club style motorcycle has gotten popular. The car there. That was unplanned. I didn't know there was a car there. I wouldn't have done that. That's okay. But this whole like club style motorcycles, like this thing that's gotten popularized. But like it actually is for good reason, because okay, they have a certain look, which if you think it looks cool, then they look cool. But like it's actually super functional. The you know, even this little guy blocks wind, and then you know, like a modern LED light gives you better visibility at night. You know, that's kind of a thing. And then like just having the taller suspension gives you better handling, and the dual front brakes for better stopping power. So like that becomes like a safety and performance thing. And then, you know, like a more powerful engine for performance, like the whole club style thing, like the 2-in-1 exhaust is for performance. It's actually very practical. So yeah, it's like an aesthetic, but it's a functional aesthetic. And I just think that younger riders and like people like me, they just want something that you can kind of be comfortable on, you know, for a 500-mile trip, but also go ripping around on. And man, I don't know if you can beat it. Like, you know, the step-up Saddleman seat, or like even the Mustang seat I have with a little bit of back protection, so if you, or you know, like backrest on it, so if you have a more powerful bike, you're not death gripping the bars when you accelerate from low speeds. I mean, this is all really functional stuff. It just happens to have a certain aesthetic to it as well. So I don't know. I'm not like, I don't care to follow trends per se. I just do what I like. But I've taken elements of these bikes and I've just said to myself, you know what, that looks cool and it's functional, right? It's actually more comfortable for me to ride this way. This bike has never been set up to be as comfortable as it is now. I can hop on this thing and really enjoy my ride to my utmost ability with this setup. You know, even just being on the highway like this at 70 miles an hour, my speedometer's a little off if you can see it, but you know, even being on the highway at 70, it's like perfectly comfortable. I can let my hands off the bars and not feel like I'm getting pushed back, and I can go faster than that too if I need to. So it really works out pretty well. I like the setup. I love the bike. I love the chassis. I mean, once you get the new motor mounts, the poly mounts, and do the suspension over a little bit, the chassis is as good as, I don't know. I mean, is it as good as an FXR or whatever? Probably not, but it's good enough for any normal person. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I am like thoroughly freaking happy and impressed with this motorcycle. Zero regrets having kept it. The things I've done to it, every dollar I've spent, I'm very content with. If I didn't enjoy riding this thing every single day the way I ride it, you know, I would fix it, right? I'd do different modifications, but if I never added a single part to this motorcycle, I think I'd be content for the foreseeable future. So I absolutely would rate this thing with the mods I've done a solid, you know, 8 or 9 out of 10. You know, I think long term, definitely a little bit more power would be great. It's good, but it's not great power. I'd love to really have a ripper. And 2-in-1 exhaust is going to happen. My exhaust is falling off this thing practically for whatever reason. It just keeps cracking. The mounts and the baffles, and it's insane. But I'm gonna just replace it with a 2-in-1. It's seen better days. It's all scraped up from cornering. I want the extra clearance as well. So we'll get that squared away. And then yeah, I mean, other than that, just routine maintenance. You know, as bike is pushing 20 years old, right? It's 18 model years old essentially at this point. So little by little, I just do different maintenancey things. You know, just replace parts that get rusty or corroded. You know, get them powder coated. You know, just keep it looking nice, right? Like I said, why can't something be functional and pretty, right? They're not mutually exclusive. It doesn't have to be a freaking rat rod. It can be a nice shiny bike that's 20 years old and you know, and still handle well. So anyways, guys, I'll stop rambling about that. If you can't tell, I really like this motorcycle. I really like some of the stuff Harley's come out with in the last few years, the Lowrider S and the ST and stuff. I thoroughly appreciate that they're finally putting some effort into performance cruisers. And it's just something that I look forward to seeing more of from them. And I do think the Revolution Max motor is a good step forward for them too. So they're in a little bit of a bind with the stock price and everything, but I think things are on the up and up. There was a bad few years there between like 2018 and the last couple of years or whatever. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, thanks for watching. God bless America. I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.